So hello everyone, I'm happy to open the sixth Doers webinar, and we're just starting now. So the topic of this webinar is going to be the earned growth rate, but this is a CX webinar, so we are going to talk about customer experience and how this is connected to building a sustainable and profitable growth engine for the company. So I will just take control and we start. So I'm here today with Gary. So hi Gary, how are you?
Oh, hi, Aiton. Good to see you guys and Esther as well. And thank you so much for the invite. I'm looking really forward to the afternoon.
Sure. So we are going to speak today, Gary, you and me, about how customer experience is supporting sustainable and profitable growth. But we're not going to stay only on the theoretical level. We are also going to show how this is applied through technology and how this is applied also through a financial model that Gary will be presenting. So let's go. Customer experience, as you know, is a business practice that promotes customer-first approach, which is its objective is to foster loyalty that will lead us to sustainable and profitable growth. The last research that was done by Bain & Company shows us that the Net Promoter Scores leaders are leading versus the average NPS score companies in profitability, revenue, and growth. So this is a very telling diagram that really shows us that the investment in NPS, which implies behind loyalty, is something which is considerable. It's something that is bringing business value to the company and is not staying just a measure that we track to measure customer satisfaction, but is something that actually has implication on the business side. Companies that invest in improving the loyalty of their customers, meaning their experience, are gaining better profitability and growth. And you can see the graph that the growth is sustainable. And I think this is one of the keys of customer experience. It's the sustainability that it generates for the growth engine of the company. When we look at companies around the world, we see that there are different levels of maturity. It starts with a spontaneous maturity, continues to starting to develop a customer experience practice, operationalizing it, then it becomes mature, and then it has also a differential aspect where companies are targeting the blue ocean, differentiating themselves versus the competition. While you are moving up the maturity curve, we are breaking the find and fix cycles that all companies are focused on. You find an issue, you fix it. What we're trying to do with the customer experience approach, we're trying to prevent things from happening at first place. This is why we have created a framework that's called the Journey Management Framework, which is a continuous cycle of improvement of the experience of customers. It starts with building a strategy, then segmenting persona profile, mapping customer journeys, detecting the opportunities that will improve customer experience, ideating solutions that will fit to customer needs and expectations, prioritizing them because every company is limited in budget and in resources. Then we are going into execution. We're measuring the impact that the execution had on customer experience, and then we are refining the cycle all over again. In the middle of the journey management methodology, there is something that we call a customer experience program that is containing everything that I have just said, and that is fed all over the cycle by business and customer data. So we are taking our decisions not just based on our sentiment, hunches, and what we think we need to do. We're taking our decisions based on customer preferences, customer voice, on customer needs, on frustrations, on things that they express. This is why we call this a data-infused journey governance cycle, which is contains both worlds. One, our perspective as an organization, how do we see things? And on the other hand, how do our customers see things? Why do we need both of them? Is because sometimes voice of the customer data or feedback data that we're collecting from the channels isn't significant enough, it's biased, and sometimes we just don't have it on specific touch points. So we have to bring also our frontline employees' perspective in the game, and then by combining both of them together, we can get closer to the perception of customers. Something important, many people tell me, well, we're getting closer to the truth that way. And the reality is that the truth doesn't really matter. The customer perception matters. So truth is one thing, and what customer thinks about you is another thing. And what you need to change is what the customer thinks about you. Looking at the pyramid of customer experience, then we see the customer experience methodology as an integration between customer needs and expectation and the business objectives. So CX is standing in the middle, bringing value in both aspects, and then as a consequence, both reducing cost and generating revenue. So this is why I said at the beginning of the presentation that this is a business practice, and it isn't just a methodology to improve or to make customers happy. This is a business practice. And as a business practice, and since the objective is really to reduce costs and generate revenue, we need financials. We need financial measures that will help us prove that our customer experience programs and the initiatives that came out of it are reducing the cost and generating the revenue. Since customer experience methodology is a business practice, then we need to create the connection between the experience matrix and the business KPIs. Each one of them is important for the company, but the company needs both of them together. So we need to bring them together. On one side, we should continue to measure NPS, customer satisfaction, customer effort score. We should continue to check what about the loyalty, the engagement, the satisfaction. This is fine. And on the other hand, we obviously have, like in any business KPIs like revenue, profitability, customer acquisition. We are measuring the lead generation pipeline, the opportunities, the conversion rate, customer attrition, and lots of other indicators. But the key here is our ability to connect the right side and the left side together. We need to show how the improvement of the CX matrix has improved also the business KPI. And for this today, we would like to show you and explain a little bit about the earned growth rate. Now, I am not going to say too much about it because Gary is going to speak and give you examples and show you also concrete things. How do we actually do it? I just want to speak about the concept of the earned growth rate and how it connects to customer experience. So the earned growth rate is a financial measure, and Gary will explain how we measure it. But it's a financial measure. But it's a special financial measure. This isn't revenue or profitability. This is a financial measure that is measuring your customer advocacy, the health of your customer base, and the health of your prospects and newcomers. If you look at the three types of customer efforts that an organization is doing, you are investing efforts in customer acquisition, you're investing effort in customer development, and you're investing effort in customer retention. All of them come together in the earned growth rate. And this is what's so special about this metric that some call the NPS 3.0. So this is really the next generation of the way that we measure the improvement of customer experience. Now, what's so key about this measure? It's that I think this is the first time that we are really connecting financials and CX. Up until now, us CX professionals, we were very much on an island, focused on improving the experience of customers and then trying as hard as we could to show how this is reflecting or impacting the business KPIs. And now comes a measure, but let's say that discussion with the CFO was something you would rarely have. You weren't discussing with the CFO, you were discussing with marketing managers, service people, salespeople, and others that are connected to customer experience. And now for the first time, there is a measure that is bringing both worlds together and that can show concretely to the CFO that the customer experience actions are generating revenue to the company and profitability, but not only short term, long term. And that's the key of the sustainability. We are measuring and managing the earned growth rate on Semantica, which is a journey management platform. And I want to show you a couple of examples how we use journey management in order to measure these three types of customer measures and how that goes into the earned growth rate. And then I will hand over to Gary, which will explain more in details how this is working. Please feel free during our presentation, during the demos, to post questions at the chat. And in the Q&A, we are going to take all of these at the end of this session after our presentations, and we will answer all of them, so don't worry. So let's have a look at Semantica. So Semantica is a journey management platform, and this is managing the customer experience side, but it is also connecting business KPIs. It has the full cycle of program management. So you can see here the SEEKS program, you can see persona profiles, customer journeys, lists of opportunities, solutions, actions, many things you can do on the platform. I want to focus in this presentation on how we are integrating business KPIs into a customer journey map, creating the first bridge between a journey mapping operational customer experience management and the financials that derive out of this. So this is a customer journey map with different personas. We can see the storyline of the journey with the different phases and stages that flow here. They're giving us the framework of the journey. And then we have different touch points that the customer is using to interact with the organization. And in each one of them, we're capturing the voice of the customer data and the sentiment of the persona. Each one of these interactions, so meaning a communication through a channel, is recording pros, cons, and insights. So we are analyzing. So if I'll click on one of them, for example, then what I can see is that I have my website, I'm in the research stage, this is what I'm doing, this is what's working well, this is not working very well. And these are all kinds of data insights, questions, things I need to check that I want to record. So by looking at Semantica, you also provide a sentiment score. And the sentiment score is providing us the average level of satisfaction of the customer in this specific interaction on the specific stage. The same way you are capturing this information on the different stages of the journey. You're getting this information, you're putting it in the system. Some it can be fed manually, some is coming automatically from integration. You can integrate into Semantica systems like Salesforce, Microsoft Dynamics, Qualtrics, Medallia, SurveyMonkey, Marketo, MailChimp, all kinds of systems. They all pour the information into Semantica, and then they reflect on the customer journey. If I scroll down, then I have dedicated swim lanes that are zooming in the pain points of the journey and are showing me where are the areas that I need to improve in terms of customer experience. And this is summarized in something we call the sentiment map, which is here, that is showing me the average sentiment level of my persona, in that case, John Davis, over the different stages of the customer journey. I am able to compare the voice of the customer data that I captured to the employee frontline ideas or understanding perception of the journey and the experience, so compare them and understand where are the gaps between my organizational perception and the customer, the voice of the customer feedback that we're collecting. Every customer journey ends with a list of opportunities that to improve customer experience, and then they're translated into a list of actions. But the thing that is really important here is everything that happens below the visibility line. So imagine a customer journey has on one side the experience of customers, and have on the other side the kitchen where you are cooking everything that the customer is using and seeing. These are the operations. This is the backstage operations, or what we call the operating model. And in this operating model, we have systems, we have departments, and we can record all of that here in the system. We can say what are the system we're using, what are the departments. I can describe my internal processes, which products I'm using, and everything that I'm using internally in the company. And then once I've mapped all of that, I can also say in Semantica, what are the business KPIs that are related to every stage of the customer journey? So for example, in awareness, in research, in purchase, in delivery, this is an example of a retail map. I can identify which are the business KPIs and what is their measure. So the outcome of improving customer experience is translated into tangible, measurable KPIs that are bringing us the understanding if we are successful or not. How does that connect to the earned growth rate? The earned growth rate, as Gary is going to explain, is connected to these three types of customer efforts: the acquisition, the development, and the retention. The KPIs that we want to measure, like the NRR, like the earned new customers and the earned growth rate, can all be recorded in Semantica and captured with integration. It means that the system can auto-calculate these indicators and check them versus the goals that we have set in the system. And this is true for all the KPIs until the additional earned growth rate that Gary will explain how we calculate it, but the calculation and the actuals are captured in Semantica. What do you earn from this? You are now able on a journey platform in a journey view to have a good view of your financials related to your customer experience efforts. We were always preaching about that, but this is how it looks like. This is how a customer journey that's connected to business KPIs is doing this job. Things behind the scenes are done with an integration to the core systems, bringing this value forward. And then me, as a consumer of this customer journey, I am able to understand and see how the customer journey flows and how the business KPIs are related to this customer experience effort that I'm doing as an organization. And this is how we bring together in Semantica both the CX people, insights, the service designers, all the great people that are working on improving the experience of the customer, and the business people that are responsible to profitability and the health of the organization from a business perspective. Now I would like to give the floor to Gary. And Gary, I would like you to explain how we calculate the earned growth rate, what it exactly is, because it sounds very cool, and we want to understand better how it articulates.
Thank you very much, Aiton. I must say I enjoyed that part very, very much. And some of the work that you're doing on the Power BI side to orchestrate the actual total of the analytics as you've actually demonstrated is really, really great here. So hopefully we'll do some justice to that.
Yes.
Just trying to get onto my screen here, if you can see that. So I'm going to go through very quickly on the calculation as Aiton has requested me to do, and then show a financial model. I made a promise to Aiton not to do too much financial work here today, but just to maybe give you the art of the possible, a glimpse of what can be achieved, and so that we can look at it from there. So I want to do it mainly in a four-part sort of area. What is a bit of the history of the earned growth rate? Essentially, how do we calculate it? A concept of show me the money, and then just closing off on where Aiton has been, but obviously a very succinct summary of that, of the power of journey mapping with modern BI and reporting tools to be able to achieve any one of the particular aspects of the KPIs that he's actually shown. So very quickly, this is a 2-year-old concept. November 2021 in the Harvard Business Review. The first article came out, and then a book called Winning on Purpose, which is literally, just coming up for 2 years of age. So, compared to some of the more modern tools and concepts out there, it's relatively young. And it actually has a massive advantage in being one of the sort of the forerunners, I think, for the areas that Rachelt and them wanted to achieve. And they make a comment, and if I can recall, he said, we realized that the only way to make the system work better, and he's talking about MPS, is to develop a complementary metric. In other words, one that actually would work with MPS and or CES or any other CSAT for that matter, that drew on accounting actual results. So as Aiton said, it's a financial metric, what the industry calls a quasi-accounting metric, and provides the ability to achieve that particular sort of stuff there. So effectively, we can go into some of the areas of it, but I'd like to jump straight in on the construct of how we actually look at earned growth and how you are able to build it into something like Semantica, where you can get decomposed. So I think the first thing that needs to get across is that the earned growth rate is a composite index, and therefore you can't manage it at the result itself. You've got to manage it by its constituent parts and how it sort of starts to deal with and to actually break down itself. So I've actually started with corporate growth, and we don't start a project, whether it's scorecard or even journey mapping, without the CEO or the CFO, COO jumping up and saying, I hope this is going to bring us growth. So the first thing one should do is to position your overall growth by whatever there. And that can be, you could be solving earned growth for your business unit, your operating unit, your segments, your personas, your products into personas, geographies, whatever there. There isn't a limit there. I've seen recently brands getting measured within earned growth and testing the brand's strength rather than looking at typical valuation models. So the first stream down would be to look at growth, and in this case 30%, and I'm using Rachelt's examples just to make it very familiar for those who have read. And we can see that we've lost 15% of our prior year revenue in this year relative on the retention basis. So effectively, compared to last year, we only have 85% of last year's revenues. And the way we achieve the 30%, if we've got a 15% growth there, we actually would achieve it, of course, by a 45% new customer area. So that's a very, very important part of the actual sort of aspect that is going with it. And then, of course, we would then start to look at the next sort of stage. And then, as I've said to you, if you've got a 15% reduction, then that means that you've actually got a net revenue retain of 85%. The stage then is to actually then start to have a look at your new customer area and sort of break that down. And you'll notice that what we do the whole time is keep it symmetrical. It is a quasi-accounting ratio, so we keep balancing. So if your new customers are 45%, how much of them were actually bought new customers and how many of them were earned new customers? And the first equation on net revenue retention, you've noticed we've put that into the green, equation 1, and the earned new customers, call that equation 2. And that will then drive you into the actual formula itself. And you can see we would have achieved 10% by that. So let's have a look at it. By taking 85%, which is what we've retained from the previous period, and taking 25%, which is the earned new customers percentage of the prior new growth, we actually add 85 plus 25, and we take away 100%. For those who feel uncomfortable about why take away 100%, don't worry about it at all. You're adding two 100% metrics together, and to get back to a single metric, you need to deduct 100% for it. Don't worry about that in any way at all. So that's in fact how the earned growth has been compiled, and you can see very clearly it's based on the repeated purchases and the referrals, and placing it probably trying to get right up to number 1 or number 2 as loyalty metrics. And there's nothing more loyal than repetitive purchases. And of course, referrals are actually, again, part of the actual CX repertoire of looking at loyalty, etc. The comment that I would like to make, and I've got a colleague in South Africa, Sam Lillian Burns, and she actually from a company called Brilliant, and she makes the comment that in order to repeat purchases, you don't have to be a promoter. So I think that's something that for another occasion, but just want to bring it across and deal with it from there. Now, once you've actually got that side dealt with, you now actually can again do a balancing act. You know that you lost 15% compared to last year. How much of that was actually due to improvements relative to developed customers? As Aiton said, it's an ADR cycle, it's acquisition, it's development, it's retention. The three-punch knockout for CX people, and within the Semantica journey map, you've actually got that common operating canvas where you actually see all of the mix of those three ingredients. What I've added on the red box here, which is what Rachel doesn't go with, I've gone gross revenue retained, which is critical because you can actually, as we'll see just in a couple of minutes' time, what you can actually have by compensating for more developed customers, those customers that actually bought, essentially upgraded as opposed to downgraded, etc. You can actually get that particular thing. So we actually tend to want to calculate gross revenue return. Imagine being a football manager and you win 5-3, then you win 4-2, then you win 6-4. You've won every game and you should be very happy. But one thing you would want to look at is the goals against, your retention rate. And so don't be sort of, into some form of news that isn't really important from that. This would then complete, and we would basically then be able to look about how development is broken up between expanding customers, but those who bought more, those who upgraded, etc., versus those that contracted. And all of these boxes, as I said, need to be managed in the whole. So within the journey mapping sort of tapestry that Aiton had showed, he was showing things like retention percentage. And that would, of course, be the gross revenue retained there, or one minus that if you wanted the churn percentage, as you've actually got here. The development side, are you actually in a growing market? What is the maturity of your organization? Should you be getting much better results into that? And then, of course, looking at it from the viewpoint of the particular stuff. So I will just quickly show you here, because this is the power of Power BI. We have got a 10% sort of earned growth here by me actually reducing the actual stuff in itself and drop the particular retention type sort of stuff. You can see it pop through, and effectively we've got a much, much better score coming through. We've now got a 20% instead of 10% just by shifting retention on a not drastic amount. If we had more time this afternoon, we could have started to substitute much more earned customers for bought customers and have a look at that overall effect and start to get a really sort of stuff through that would make a massive difference. And then to conclude on this side of it, people erroneously call it the earned growth ratio. There is an earned growth ratio, but it's not the earned growth rate. So the earned growth rate is what we've calculated, which is the net retained revenue plus your earned new customers minus 100%. And when I put that earned growth rate over the actual corporate rate or the actual overall rate growth of revenue, I will then get my earned growth ratio. And that's a very important ratio, because you want to know, as that increases and from the CX viewpoint, we become a bigger part of future growth. And we start to trend it, and we start to say, well, we started off at 5% of growth, and we were able to influence that amount. We're now up to 55%, and we're going to go to 75 because we're going to be dealing with a lot more of that side. Let's start to look at that. So all of these ratios are very important and need to be managed in isolation, but with the richness of the combination to get through to your top and to your final results. So just a quick comment on bought customers. In reality, it's been left out of here because it's not part of the earned side. Many companies deal with that there. it does, if your marginal revenue still exceeds your marginal cost, it's a great deal. And remember, today's bought customer will be tomorrow's retained customer. So it becomes a very important part of that. In terms of the retention side, again, in terms of the model that we do in practice, and Rachel doesn't mention in his type of articles, but you need to also look at retention around acquisition. What did you miss? What are the leaky buckets? So I can imagine the tragedy of having excellent earned new customers and you're losing 20, 30% of the time. So in practice, you'll pick that up and you'll actually drive those type of things forward. In terms of the other comment on retention, you also need to divide it between voluntary and involuntary. Not all retention is your fault, and that would drive from that thing. So you'd be able to, with Semantica, for example, you're pulling out those numbers on the KPI side, and you'd be able to use the power of Power BI to do what I've done here, is to have a look at changing any one of the drivers here, from retention to customer expansion to customer basically contraction, to earn new customers and bought new customers, and start playing with the effect of what that might do on the stuff. If you're writing an exam and you've got very limited time, and somebody says calculate the earned growth rate, all you need to do is take the overall, and this is why we like to start with actual overall revenue growth, is just take that from the bought customers, and you'll actually end up with the stuff. It will give you the exact same score, just to shortcut that quickly and drive from there. So if we can quickly look at a scenario of the area here, and I've just put up 5 particular areas. This is the first one that we showed with that 10% area. And what would happen in regard to being a company that was unsuccessful? Well, they would still achieve the top growth, but you would see that they would lose 40% of their customers, very little compensation by development, and therefore they would have had to buy, in compensating, an absolute, sort of area where they've lost 40% of their prior year revenues, and they're going to have to get out this year and go and buy customers in order to deal with that. It comes as no surprise that they've got a minus 30%, and that would be something that you would want to focus on if you had business units or brands or products or customer segments that were achieving that. The third one is the one I get questioned quite often. Can you have a so-called negative churn or a positive retention? And the answer is yes. If you are able to very, very clearly provide an upgrade on your customers, we've got customers that have got, for example, 4 shops at a shopping center. Within the next financial year, they've got 15. So they may lose 1 or 2 of those 4 shops they started with, but the reality of the stuff is they expanded. And given that, you can get a very credible earned growth rate, which would provide you with the overall stuff by actually developing your current customers, again, depending on your maturity cycle. The fourth one is basically, again, looking at various other stuff. You can see it quite explicitly. And again, what's actually happening here, you've got the wrong mix between earned and bought. And the last one is your disaster scenario. And the fourth one just tells you that if you're going to get a negative growth rate, then try and just be a big part of that negative to lessen it. That's it. So what would an ideal situation be where you've got a very high growth rate, you've basically got positive retention, positive churn, you basically have put most of your stuff into referrals, and you can see you'd be up into top territory there, which would give you almost a 45% earned growth. And that is what the top performers are doing at the moment, around about 45 to 55. And most importantly, making sure from a trend viewpoint that continues for a time to be. So if I could just quickly change screens here. So, Aitan, I promised you, I'm not going to turn this into much of a big financial sort of exercise. But what we've done is we built a area called a finance CX demo model. It's based on what accountants would call the DuPont, and it's on the earned growth rate. And effectively, we can start to step it out. So let's say this was a manufacturing company in South Africa, Africa, Europe, and you would have price and you would have your volume, You would have your unit costs, and that would give you your revenue and cost of sales. We've added into this particular stuff here a little bit of CX expenditure and marketing expenditure. And the purists would say, well, what is CX? Isn't that the whole sort of map? Well, we're just combining that on the CX team. And that obviously would give you a net contribution. And then, of course, we would have some operating expenses. We would take that down to the next area and start to build the top there, our income statement, or in other countries, what they call their profit and loss. Then we would actually start to put our working capital in and start to look at the particular the sort of areas that would drive with that, our sort of total operating asset base. And we would pitch that against the base so that we actually are able to start looking at a return. And that's really what we're looking at here. So this would be the world of the finance. And to the financial people, it's very important to add to their world or explain to the world, not to take away. So if you look at this, it is just plain as it is, and it's given us a sort of all the figures that we would want. There's filters here that we can actually deal with. We can go in terms of any parts of the segments if we were running it. We can go different financial years. And at the end of the day, what we would need to do now is to say, hang on, where are we going to fit into this thing? And this is where our overlay would come into it, where we would actually start to say, right, let's bring in the earned growth components. And we've already gone through those in terms of the ADR cycle. As Aiton has said, we're going to deal with our revenue retention. We're going to deal with our contracted development. We're going to deal with our expanded development. We're going to have earned new customers, and we're going to have bought new customers. And we are able very, very quickly then to start changing the stuff. So I can click, for example, on retention and effectively start to say, all right, well, let me start to change my retention here a little bit. And what does it actually do to my particular stuff here? You can see by changing like almost 5% of that type of thing, I've almost pushed my return up by 4%. My profitability down here has gone right through the roof. And I've actually probably done about a 6 or 7 times more operating profit than I had before. I'm not going to do too much more modeling in this space, for especially the short time for this afternoon. But one of the things that would be very important is looking at our expenditure and in terms of our customer success and customer management expenditure. And we could easily calculate our CX ROIs, the holy grail that we look for, the marketing ROIs, combine them in terms of customer management, customer success ROIs. We could be looking at firm value, shareholder value, and showing what a 1% change in revenue, or more importantly, what a 1% change in something like earn new customers could provide, and essentially show how we could increase the value of the firm by actually doing that while we actually increase the customer lifetime value per se. And that would be something that on the show me the money, you know, when we talk cost and we talk investment in the particular stuff, they see profit and cost. When we talk on basic areas of return, they're seeing it in terms of what's going to hit the bottom line. What do we say to the analysts at the end of the 3-month quarter? How do we drive from there? So the accountants have got a little poem which goes, revenue is vanity, and profit is sanity, and cash flow is reality. So if you look at that, we are driving off a top line. We're looking at earned growth, which is a revenue line. We're going to have to convince them that through our fantastic CX efforts, all the stuff that Aiton's saying, and using the tools that they've actually got, we actually are then driving and making sure all of those particular things happen. So Aiton, I've kept my promise. I'm not going to do any modeling here. But the reality of the stuff is I'm just going to quickly go on to the last screen and then hand back to you, is just to show you where the earned growth has the versatility and why journey maps is so important. Because, you know, here you can see we're managing key customers and we're managing personas. We're looking at all of the particular stuff, and we're building up a betting line because this company wants to try and improve their earned growth using the acquisition, development, and retention thrusts that are available to them, and all the stuff that would go around it. You know, how do we actually set up a baseline and say, guys, you're not going to be doing much more than that over this period of time. This is where you are. And the only way we're going to beat the betting line, the only way we're going to get above that particular white line is by interventions using Semantica type tools, using the actual power of databasing and pulling it all together. So, Aitan, I hope that's given enough of an exploration of the particular stuff. And hand back to you.
Okay, thank you, Gary. Actually, this is, many years in the CX space, and now that I see how numbers are connected into it, and finally there's a path to connect finance and customer experience that is very tangible, and I really like it. And I already have ideas how to this can go into implementation.
I'm
So
sure.
I'm taking back, and we are just in a second going to open the Q&A. So I'd like you 3 takeaways just before Q&A. So 3 things I want us to remember that was the messages we're trying to deliver here. 1, customer loyalty is the key here. Everything that Gary presented is around customer loyalty. I mean, all these numbers are coming because customers are staying for the long term. And this is what's so great about the earned growth rate, is the ability to understand, are you building sustainable growth and long-term relationship with your customers, or is it something which is short-term? You're just winning customers and losing them, winning and losing them. The second thing is that the journey management approach is here to help you run this as an improvement cycle. This isn't something you do one time. It's not a one shot. It's not you put this Power BI report to play and that's it. There's the effort that you need to do behind the scenes so the loyalty keeps on going. And the fact that you have loyal customers today doesn't mean that your loyal customers are going to stay with you tomorrow. You need to keep and change with the changes and fluctuations on the market. And the third point is the return on investments. And this is the connection. The earned growth rate is a way to measure the return on investment. The fact that you are building and heavily investing in improving the experience of your customers is paying off. And the earned growth rate is here to expose this to everyone, saying it's working. Continue to invest in improving the experience of your customers because it's bringing you business value. And that's the bottom line. Gary, we came to the Q&A session. I think we could talk about this topic hours, but there are 2 questions for you. 2 questions for you, 2 questions for me. So I will start with you because you the one that's presented the last. So there was a question, if you can explain again, what's the difference between a bought customer and an earned customer?
That's a very, very good question. And it's one that I will answer, but will be defined for a long, long time in an organization. But essentially, and the textbook answer to that is, a bought customer is where you've outlaid some form of money, a give to get, paid advertising, your sales force, any of that type of expenditure that you've actually put in. And you can trace that expenditure to the actual lead that came back that provided you with a customer. Earned is an interesting concept, in that it's essentially what you have earned through basically your brand strength, your loyalty, and that there isn't any direct contact through that other than a very large group of customers that have actually referred you and they have come into it. Now, the marketing people have actually broken that into 3 concepts. They've got earned, owned, and bought. So what they really are saying is that if you can prove that you've spent money, then that's a bought new customer. If you actually have got an onboarding system or some form of lead sourcing that you can actually start to determine, you can start to pull through and say, that's an earned new customer. They came in through matters that weren't related to outflows or funding outwards.
Okay, great. Gary, there was also another question. That's why I gave it to you, because it's a tough one. Is who's responsible for earned growth rate in the company?
There's a very good question. And I think The fact that earned growth is only 2 years old is basically something that in reality is probably going to be tossed around. But I think if you remember when ERPs first came out, it was always the financial people that did that. Earned growth has primarily been run by customer experience and the customer management team at the moment. It obviously may start to become a lot broader, but at the moment, it's run very, very clearly from the 5 or 6 examples I could give you is really around customer experience teams adopting it and then implementing it and then trying to push it around to start dealing with it. What you need to do is you need to have IT partnership relative to the databasing. Net retained revenue is a very easy metric to get out of your databases. Your development cost, or how much more did you get from developed customers this year than last year, again, is querying on a database, and you can get that. And then the third partner on this whole thing will be your financial people. When they start getting excited about it, and the fact that it is a ratio that they relate to, I mean, many companies are already measuring net retained revenue. So once you get that and the correlation between that and business outcomes, and the correlation between earned growth and customer experience activities, like, for example, NPS, you can correlate that. If you've got 20 surveys going out a year and you've got an earned growth of, let's say, minus 15%, and all your surveys are green, you're not talking to the right people at the right time with the right questions. So it's going to take a little bit of trial and error. It is still very, very new, but arguably at the moment, I think it's a safer bet to have it in the hands of the customer experience professionals who understand it better at the moment, but then spread it and start, like any good project in any company, start getting a cross-talented team together that actually drives it through and making it almost the metric of choice.
And Gary, last question for you. While you were speaking, there was another one posted, and then I'll take it. There's a question, getting all the data. What you showed in the Power BI report looks great. I want it tomorrow, but we know the reality. And if I want to get all this data in, NRR, to calculate all of that and to know who are the referred customers versus customers that, bought versus earned and all of that, that can be pretty complicated. So what do you do in cases where there are gaps in the information? I have some of it, 80%, but there's 20% that I don't have, or it's difficult for me to get to the report. So what's your recommendation on that?
Another good question, Aitan, and I think the old story is it's better to get started. It's better to be approximately right than precisely wrong or not start at all. So if you've got a 20% gap, call it a 50% gap if you want. That's fine. You've got that 50% gap. The question is, of the 50% you've got, anchor it down and actually get the metric going. Now, if, for example, you're battling with referred customers, or you're battling with, somebody's going to put their hand up at the back of the boardroom and say, oh, we got a customer that came from nowhere. We had a campaign 2 years ago, and now they've joined us. Is that bought, or is it earned, or what it is? So I like to do what I call 5 boxes. Box 1 is your absolutely no doubt bought. You can track it from your marketing tracing systems. You've got your automation systems, and you can track it. If you're doing account-based management, or if you're doing inbound marketing and outbound marketing, you pick that up. The second box is the 50-50 box, where maybe it's just a timing issue. You haven't got the actual sort of stuff, but it's just a timing issue. Box number 3 is the one that's going to be a very interesting one there, which you don't know. You can't trace it from your systems, but it doesn't mean it's bought to there. So you allocate that customer into that and start to learn from it. Maybe it's your brand strength. Through fantastic customer experience, you built your brand and they came in through that particular sort of area. Box number 4 is the 50-50 on the stuff you've got. For example, a company that has one account, they open 2. Or they bring a family member in if it's an insurance setup, or they get married and they bring their partner in, so that there's that association. And box 5 is the unequivocal, these were referred, when were they on the onboarding process, they say where they came from, and that's it. And the problem with the onboarding process at the moment, Aiton, is that we see lots of data around it. Nobody doesn't say, where did you hear from us or how did you get here? The problem is it just sits like on the back of a piece of paper and isn't going into it. And that's the beauty of the earned growth, because it's going to force that discipline and to say, from whence did these leads come? How did these customers arrive? And what's it going to cost us? So if you look at customer acquisition costs, which the marketing people do very well, um, it's a top 3 metric with us, and I always see it on the Semantica KPI boards. Have you ever seen customer retention costs? And we're doing lots of scorecards and this type of stuff. Customer retention is not getting measured, and therefore those particular things, what are we retaining? Who are we getting referrals in? The discipline is not there at the moment. But once the interest in the earned growth rate does rise, and it is already, it's a case of let's get that process right. Essentially, if you can't measure it, we'll never be able to manage it. So that, I think, is a succinct answer to that. There's no clear-cut stuff, and all companies will have their own basic blueprints and their own sort of cookbooks on how to put this together, I think. So the sooner this started, the absolute better.
There's
And
a
don't go
question.
don't go for precision.
Okay.
Get it approximately right. Don't worry about
Yes. Getting it
of
exactly on the dollar. Yeah. I mean, it gives you the global picture of
that's
where
right.
you are and what you need to do. And I think this is something important in ROI measurement, globally speaking. When
Yeah,
I am asked about, when I'm, giving, explaining about the ROI topic, many times people tell me, yeah, but I know exactly what's the number. And I'm saying they don't have to know exactly what the number. You can also put
absolutely.
some assumption. And as long as you work in this methodology,
Exactly.
then that will bring you the benefits, and you don't have to be
Exactly.
very accurate about that. There's a question I'm gonna take, even though that they wanted you to answer it, but you spoke a
No,
lot,
please,
so
Elton.
I will take it. And this question is very interesting, actually. Why do we need to measure CX metric when we have all these financial statistics? I mean, if the earned growth rate is telling me that everything is well, then why do I need to measure NPS, CSAT, CS? And I want to answer that, and maybe Gary, if you want to
Please.
complete anything on that, then
Sure.
please be my guest. So the earned growth rate and all the financial statistics and indicate KPIs that Gary was showing are definitely a good indicator to understand the health of the company and the health of the customer install base and the marketing and sales operation and all of that. And it's definitely implying on that the customers are happy as well, because they're renewing, they're recommending, they are referring, etc. I agree with that. But as I said in the presentation, it's about building a long-term relationship and being all the time um, listening to your customers and meeting their needs and expectations. So the fact that currently the earned growth rate, which is a statistic that's showing you what's happened in the past, today and in the past, up until now, this is good, doesn't mean that it will continue to be that way. You have to continue and keep the CX matrix, because the CX matrix are representing a practice of listening to customer. And the listening to the customers is bringing you their needs and expectations, and the actions that you will carry out will then reflect back in the board that was shown by Gary. That's okay, but it doesn't mean that your CX matrix and operation is unnecessary when you have just the financial data. You need both of them. The financial data are a reflection of the actions you're doing on the
Absolutely.
customer experience space, and your customer needs and expectation reflect through the CX matrix, the customer satisfaction, effort, and NPS, and also others. That's it. Gary, do you have anything you want to say for closure?
No, Aiton, I couldn't have given that answer any better than you did. It was great.
Okay.
So yeah, so on the final word, I think thank you very much for the opportunity to present today, and hopefully the earned growth rate will become very, very much part of business life.
I-
And I can't think of doing something like that. We make it look easy from Power BI, and it's after the fact.
yes.
So, you've got to do all of the stuff exactly like that wheel you showed, the acquisition, development, retention on top of almost a sort of journey mapping tool, Semantica, like Atlas from the Greek mythology of holding up the world and being able to do it. That's where it starts. And basically, the rest to finish it is made easy once you get a good start.
Thank you very much, Gary. Thank you very much, everyone, for participating. In case you have any questions or you want to know more, please don't hesitate to contact us, and we will be more than happy to help you and answer your questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you all.